This lecture introduces you what is object-oriented programming and the basic terms in object-oriented programming such as classes, objects, fields, and methods. In the next lecture, we will see how to create the classes and objects practically. So first we will understand what is the object-oriented programming, what is the goal of object-oriented programming, what is object and its features, and understanding the classes and methods, and also how the class and objects are associated. So that is the points between 1 to 4 will be covered in this lecture. So what is object-oriented programming? It is a programming model or programming paradigm which is one of the most popular programming models for scalable applications. The meaning of scalable applications is object-oriented programming, that is OOP, is a common programming style for smallest and largest applications also. So you need not worry if the requirements change or increase in future. You can implement object-oriented programming in object-oriented programming languages such as Java, Python, JavaScript, C++, etc. As per object-oriented programming, the object is a primary entity where we store some data about a particular person or thing. The goal of object-oriented programming is to group up the data and its operations as a single unit called object. What is object? Object is a physical item that represents a real person or thing. For example, all the physical things are the examples of objects. Suppose there are 3 cars, so each individual car is an example of object. Each object contains some details about itself. For example, this car object represents the details about itself, such as registration number of the car model, car year, etc. Let us take a scenario. For example, John has taken an insurance policy for his car. So John is an object of customer class, his car is an example of car class, and his insurance policy is an object of insurance policy class. So every example of a class is called as an object. So every physical thing is an object and its type is an example of class. So what is class? A class is a model of objects. A class is a type of objects. So in the example of car insurance, John is an example of customer class because he is a customer. That means there may be other customers, for example Alan or Anna. These two are also examples of objects of customer class. So class is a type of objects, but class is not a collection of objects. The class describes the list of fields and methods that you want to store inside the object. But in fact, object stores only fields but not methods. So methods remain as a part of the class itself. Only fields are stored inside the object. For example, you have created a class called car with the fields registration number, car model, car year. These are the details about the particular object. So these are declared inside the class but stored inside the object. These details are stored in every object. For example, in the car object 1, we have registration number, car model and car year. And in the second object of car class also, we have registration number, car model and car year respectively. So every object stores the set of fields that are prescribed by its own class. A method is a collection of statements to do some particular process or operation. You may want to create a method for reading the inputs. You may want to create a method for doing the calculation. You may want to create a method for displaying the output. You may want to create the method for any individual operation that can be performed one or more times. In general, methods access the fields and do the manipulations. For example, there is a class called person with a field called a date of birth. So whenever you want to store a value, then you will go for field. That is the date of birth in this case. But you want to calculate the age of the person based on date of birth. So where the calculation is involved, you should go to the method. That is, age calculation is a method that will calculate the age of the person based on the date of birth. So calculation of age is a method that depends on the field. So in that way, methods depend on fields in general. So overall, fields is only about how to store the values, but not how to manipulate. On the other hand, methods are only for calculation or processing the data, but not for storage. So methods will not be stored anywhere in the object. Methods are just part of the code, or you can say part of the class, but associated to class. You cannot write any code statements outside the method. That means inside the class, you cannot write any normal code such as console.writeLine. You should create a method. Inside the method only you can write actual code. To understand how the class and objects are associated, to take an example. For example, you have a class called car and it has fields, for example, registration number, car model and car year. This is the model of a car. So these three fields will be repeated for every object. And also you have a method called calculate EMI, which is a part of the car class itself. And you have a special memory location called heap. That means the reserved memory area for every application execution. That means every time when you run the application, a new memory area will be allocated for that application in RAM, that is random access memory. So that memory area is called as heap. All the objects are stored inside the heap only. So in the heap you have created two objects. Each object contains its own fields. All the objects are stored inside the heap. And each object contains the list of fields that are prescribed by its class. But values may differ. For example, in case of first object, registration number is MH123, but in the second object, registration number is TS456. So among the objects, fields list is same, but values are different. The class describes the list of fields that you want to store inside the object. Each object stores the same set of fields that are given by its class. No object can store additional fields or cannot remove any existing fields. So the object is created based on the class, so it has to follow the same list of fields that are given by its class. And even the field names and data types are given by its own class. But objects doesn't store methods. Objects are associated to the class methods. That means the first object can access the method of the corresponding class. Even the second object also can call the same method. So while calling the method, there should be a current object based on which the method is called. Without a current object, the method cannot be executed. So overall, class is a model of object. Object is a physical item that is created based on the existing class. Object stores the list of fields that are prescribed by its own class. Objects can call all the methods of the corresponding class. To store the value, go for field. For example, date of birth of the person. If any process or calculation is involved to find out the value, go for method. For example, calculation of EMI based on the car, or calculation of age based on the date of birth, calculation of tax amount based on the earnings of the employee. This is the overview of class, object, field and methods. In the further lectures, we will see how to implement them practically.